Okay, if you're looking for the fastest way to get your head around probably the biggest shift in media in, well, a generation, you are absolutely in the right place.
Yeah, definitely.
Today, we're diving deep into how news consumption has just been completely turned upside down. And it's not being driven by the big traditional outlets anymore.
No, not at all. It's individuals. People who figured out how to become, I guess, huge media operations, sometimes literally from their bedrooms.
Right. And we're basing this on some really solid ground today.
Absolutely. We're drawing from a massive piece of research. It's a study from the Reuters Institute and the University of Oxford. This isn't just anecdotal. They meticulously mapped this whole ecosystem of news creators and influencers.
I have to do that.
They used data from their digital news report surveys, the 2024 and 2025 ones. They crunched open text responses from 24 different countries.
Wow.
Yeah, and algorithms plus human review cleaned it all up, identifying and analyzing over 40,000 unique individuals that audiences actually named.
40,000. Okay, that's serious scale. So our mission today is basically to show you exactly how these, social media personalities, these creators, have become the new gatekeepers for information, often completely sidestepping the traditional news brands we all grew up with. This really feels like the blueprint for the future of professional publishing.
It really does. And the numbers that define this change, well, they're pretty startling.
Let's get into it. The scale of this audience shift.
Okay, so let's jump right in. If you look at the entire U.S. adult population, roughly a fifth, that's 21%, say they regularly get news from creators or influencers.
Okay, 1 in 5. That's significant already.
It is. But here's where it gets really interesting. Zoom into the under 30s in the U.S. That figure jumps to over a third, 37%.
Over a third, okay.
But the real kicker, the bit that shows this complete attention flip, is among the under 35s who are actually using social media. For them, they're now more likely to get news from creators, that's 48%, than from mainstream media brands, which is down to 41%.
Wow. So it's not just a trend, it's an inversion, 48% versus 41%. That's not a small gap. That's like the loss of dominance for reaching the next generation.
It fundamentally changes the whole game. Publishers aren't just competing with each other anymore. They're competing against individuals, often with much lower overheads.
Right.
And this shift, it's not happening uniformly across the globe. The study shows this huge geographical divide.
Okay, so where are creators really winning this battle for eyeballs?
Well, they have significant influence in really populous countries. Think Brazil, Mexico, Indonesia, the Philippines.
Okay, big social media markets.
Exactly. Also Thailand, India, and parts of Africa, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, and of course the U.S., as we just saw. In many of these places, creators are actually getting more attention on social platforms than the legacy news brands.
Is there a common thread there? Why those countries specifically?
It seems like the common factor might be places where legacy media has historically been a bit weaker, or perhaps where trust in traditional institutions is lower. Individual voices seem to fill that vacuum much faster.
Which kind of explains the political angle too, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The political implications are already playing out. You see top politicians, Macron in France, Keir Starmer in the UK, making it a priority to do interviews with these new personalities.
Yeah, treating them like essential channels to reach younger voters.
Exactly. And there's another fascinating political dimension here. In countries where mainstream media debate might be, let's say, restricted or state-controlled, creators often provide alternative viewpoints, sometimes very critical ones. They're tapping into this societal need for different perspectives, for accountability, that the traditional outlets might not be able to fulfill.
So they become politically vital in those contexts.
Vital, yes.
Yeah.
But it also brings up huge questions around, reliability of information, misinformation, all that. Big risks involved.
Okay, so let's try and understand this landscape better. You said it's messy, fragmented. How did the study categorize these creators?
Yeah, it's definitely messy. The lines are fuzzy. But they tried to create a sort of typology, dividing creators into two main buckets. First, the core challengers, those focused squarely on the news.
Right.
And second, the news-adjacent voices. These are people who shape cultural and political debates mainly through their massive reach, even if they don't cover traditional news topics every day.
Okay, let's start with the news category. What are the types there?
So within the news, they identified 4 main modes of influence. The one mentioned most often by audiences, commentary.
Okay, commentary. So we're talking personality-driven shows, right? The Joe Rogans, the Tucker Carlsons of the world. What makes them so dominant?
I think it boils down to 2 things. personality, and crucially, freedom.
Freedom.
Yeah, this kind of content is generally low cost to produce. You don't need a huge news gathering setup. And critically, it thrives outside the rules of impartiality that usually constrain traditional broadcasters.
Ah, okay. No need for balance in the same way.
Precisely. And interestingly, a lot of the biggest names here are actually former journalists, people who left legacy newsrooms specifically because they wanted the freedom to express their, quote, true opinions, often in a very polarizing way.
So that lack of constraint is actually a feature, not a bug for their audience.
Exactly. It taps directly into a demand for what feels like an unfiltered voice.
Okay, what's the second type in the news category?
That's news and investigation. Now, this seems like the area where creators would struggle the most, right? Because proper investigation needs resources.
Yeah, boots on the ground, data analysis.
For sure. And overall, this is where creators make the least impact compared to well-funded newsrooms. But, and this is important, the exceptions are incredibly significant.
Like what?
Think about citizen journalists, people reporting directly from conflict zones, like Palestinians sharing footage and accounts from Gaza, or individuals documenting things like police brutality during protests, say in Kenya. Their impact can be immediate and vital.
Right, providing perspectives you might not get otherwise. And what about more structured investigation?
There's that too. The study mentions the OSINT approach, open source intelligence.
Ah, yeah, Bellingcat and groups like that.
Exactly. Using publicly available data, satellite images, social media posts, flight trackers, whatever, to verify events, uncover truths. It shows that creators can actually set new standards for investigative work,
Right.
even without traditional newsroom resources.
Okay, commentary, news, and investigation. What's number 3?
Number 3 is explanation. These are the creators who really excel at breaking down complex issues, making them digestible, especially for younger audiences.
The explainers, like Hugo de Crypt in France.
He's the classic example, yeah. Simplifies politics, social issues, even interviews world leaders. These explainers often have a sort of symbiotic relationship with mainstream media. They might remix or simplify existing news reports.
So they're not always creating entirely new information, but making existing information accessible.
Often, yes. And that provides huge value. Think about someone like Herr Anwalt in Germany, a lawyer explaining complex legal stuff to Gen Z in a way they understand. That's a real service.
Makes sense. And the final category in the core news bucket.
That's specialism. This is where you find the deep dive experts, often people with professional backgrounds, ex-journalists, lawyers, doctors, academics.
Focused on one specific niche.
Exactly. Like Fabrizio Romano for football transfers, everyone hangs on his every tweet. Or Taylor Lorenz covering internet culture in minute detail. They build these incredibly devoted communities around their niche.
And they monetize that directly, right? Subscriptions, memberships.
Yes, often bypassing advertising altogether. And this is a huge challenge for newsrooms because this is where the talent drain really starts. These specialists realize they can build their own brand and make a better living independently.
We'll definitely come back to that talent drain. But quickly, what about the news adjacent category? You said they shape debates through reach.
Yeah, these are creators who might rarely cover, say, politics or war directly. But their audiences are so enormous that they inevitably influence public opinion and culture.
So who falls into this category?
Well, you've got satire and comedy. Think John Oliver in the U.S., or someone like Brozo, the satirical clown in Mexico, who's a major political commentator in his own way.
Okay. Comedy is commentary.
Right. Then there's the huge world of infotainment podcasts. People like Stephen Bartlett with Diary of a CEO, or Alex Cooper's Call Her Daddy. They cover business, self-help, celebrity interviews.
Didn't Call Her Daddy have Kamala Harris on?
Exactly. That shows their mainstream influence. They cover topics traditional news might ignore, but that millions find relevant.
And what else in news adjacent?
Lifestyle influencers. People with absolutely massive followings like Virginia Fonseca in Brazil with, 53 million on Instagram? They might post about fashion or family, but their reach gives them cultural weight.
So the key insight here is really about how broadly people now define news. It's not just headlines from D.C. or Brussels.
Exactly. For many, especially younger audiences, news is basically anything new or interesting to them. That now absolutely includes lifestyle, hobbies, entertainment areas, traditional news largely ceded.
Which brings us nicely to the sort of key findings, the biases, and how the platforms themselves shape all this.
Right. Section 3.
One thing that jumps out is the concentration of stars. It's not an even playing field, is it?
Not at all. You see a handful of really big breakout names, the Rogans, the Carlsons, who just tower over this incredibly long tail of smaller niche creators. It's a classic power law distribution.
And you mentioned the U.S. commentators having global reach.
Yeah, the global commentator effect.
Yeah.
While most news consumption is still pretty national, these English language, often right-leaning U.S. political commentators travel incredibly well.
So Rogan, Carlson, Ben Shapiro, they pop up in top lists elsewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Canada, Australia, parts of Europe, they're definitely influencing local political conversations way beyond the U.S. borders. And just to hammer home the influence of certain individuals, Elon Musk was mentioned as someone people follow for news in all 24 countries surveyed.
Wow.
Okay. Now let's talk about a really stark finding, the gender gap.
Yeah, this one is pretty undeniable. The study found that 85% of the top individuals mentioned by audiences across all 24 countries were men.
85%. That's huge.
It's massive. And that dominance is especially strong in political commentary, which, as we said, is where a lot of the influence and money seems to be concentrated right now.
Are there any exceptions?
The Philippines was noted as having the lowest proportion of men in its top list, around 46%. But overall, the picture is clear. This new, powerful sphere of personalized news is overwhelmingly male-dominated.
It feels like we're replacing one kind of media establishment with another that might be even less diverse in some ways.
That's certainly a risk, yeah.
Okay, what about the platforms? Where does this all happen? Does it matter where you consume this content?
Oh, absolutely. The platform shapes the content. The study identified YouTube as probably the single most important platform for news creators overall.
Why YouTube?
It's suited for that longer-form commentary, the deep dives, the video essays, the investigations. It allows for more depth.
But other platforms have their niches, right?
Definitely. X, formerly Twitter, is still seen as pivotal for real-time political commentary, breaking news, and following politicians directly. It's about speed and immediacy there.
And TikTok, Instagram.
They're huge, especially for reaching younger demographics.
Yeah.
They favor explainers and lifestyle creators because the platforms are built around short-form, visually engaging content. The medium really dictates the message.
Which leads us straight into the implications for professional publishing. How are they supposed to cope with all this?
Yeah, Section 4. This is the crux of it for traditional media. They are clearly struggling to adapt their tone, their storytelling formats, even the subjects they cover to compete on these platforms.
It feels like they missed the boat on certain types of content.
I think so. They largely ignored that audience appetite for entertainment, for lifestyle content, for deep dives into passions and niches. Creators jumped right into that gap.
And the talent drain you mentioned earlier is a direct result of that.
It's a huge part of it. Talented journalists, experts, commentators see they can build their own dedicated audience and, frankly, often make more money and have more control going independent.
You mentioned Paul Krugman leaving the New York Times for Substack as an example earlier. It's about owning the audience relationship, isn't it?
Exactly. When you work for the Times owns the audience relationship. When you're on Substack, you own it. You can nurture that community, monetize it directly. That shift from audience aggregation to audience ownership is fundamental.
And these creators aren't just individuals anymore, are they? They're professionalizing.
Massively. The successful ones are becoming mini businesses, mini media companies. Hugo Decrypt, you mentioned him. He employs over 20 staff now. Johnny Harris launched his own venture, New Press, to build a network of independent channels. They're building infrastructure outside the legacy system.
So for legacy media, what are the options? Compete head-on or try to collaborate?
Those seem to be the main paths. We see some organizations trying to compete by hiring young creators, bringing that social native talent in-house to run their TikTok or YouTube channels. Think Le Monde or Die Zeit.
Injecting that DNA into the old structures.
Right, or you see partnerships. Vox is signing deals to help monetize established creators. The Washington Post experimented with bringing creator content onto their platform, clearly labeled, trying to leverage that personal reach within their institutional framework.
But that sounds tricky, especially with the commentary types.
It's incredibly tricky, and this is the major roadblock the study highlights, the clash of norms.
The impartiality thing again.
Yeah. Many of the most successful creators, particularly in news and politics, built their brands precisely by rejecting traditional journalistic norms, like objectivity or impartiality. Their values, their voice, their perspective, often their partisanship.
So how can a legacy brand whose reputation is built on impartiality and trust effectively partner with someone whose whole appeal is being opinionated and unfiltered?
It's like trying to mix oil and water sometimes. Collaboration, especially around core news, risks damaging the legacy brand's credibility, that trust built over decades.
But not collaborating risks becoming completely irrelevant to younger audiences who are getting their information elsewhere.
Exactly. It's an almost impossible tightrope walk. This convergence of the professional media world and the creator world is happening. It's messy. It's dynamic. The outcomes are really going to depend on things like platform incentives, finding sustainable business models, and somehow establishing standards or safeguards for trust and regulation that don't kill the energy that makes creators appealing in the first place.
Okay, so pulling this all together for you, the listener, what's the big takeaway? The news landscape has fundamentally, irrevocably changed. Personality, niche specialization, and being agile on the right platforms, that's the new formula.
Creators have absolutely proven they can capture attention, build loyal communities, and generate trust, at least with their specific audiences. But the questions around reliability, consistency, and the long-term sustainability of these one-person or small-team media operations are still very much open.
And maybe the final thought to leave you with, something the study really underscores. That commentary category, the most influential one, it thrives precisely because it operates outside traditional rules of impartiality.
Right. So for legacy journalism, the existential question remains, can they find a way to engage younger audiences, compete in these highly personalized, often partisan spaces, without sacrificing the core journalistic standards that have always defined their value and their brand?
Or is the only path forward some kind of painful reinvention? One that maybe accepts that in today's media environment, having a clear voice and perspective might actually be more valuable to audiences than striving for that traditional notion of objectivity.
That's the multi-billion-dollar question facing the industry right now. And how they answer it will really define the next decade of news.